This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chair and members, we've reached quorum.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, November 9th meeting of the TPB for WAMPO. This time, I want to welcome everyone, and I'll call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to approve the November 9th, 2021 agenda. Everyone's had an opportunity to review it. Is there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, move to approve. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second by Councilwoman Tuttle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from October 12th, and those minutes were in your package. So are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, move to approve the October 12th meeting minutes. Do I have a second? We have a second. Who seconded it? Jack. Okay, thank you, Jack. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Chairman, I'm going to need to abstain. I didn't attend the meeting.
Very good. All right, next item is the chairman's report. I'll turn it over to our director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of Transportation Policy Body. Quick update on today's agenda. We have 4 main items, 2 of them action items and a couple more update items. Wanted to share the perspective of where these action items and updates are fitting in our big picture on long-range transportation plan, short-range transportation plan, TIP, and the administration aspects of the WAMPO. The first item today, CRISA funds and the funding allocation falls under short-range transportation plan, the TIP update. The second item, UPWP 2022, is administration aspects of WAMPO, that is planning activities for next year. The third item is an update, the MTP long-range transportation plan amendment that will be on the agenda for December 14th meeting for your approval at the TPB. And then Nick and staff will present to you what projects are included in this amendment. Now, the last item in this new business section is the TIP projects and where are the location of the TIP projects. So staff is presenting additional clarity on location of the projects and funding of the projects. So just an update item. Next meeting, there will be TIP amendment action item as well for you. So staff will bring that at the next meeting. So just a quick update on how all of our action items and updates are fitting into 3 aspects: the long-range transportation planning aspect, the short-range transportation planning aspect, and the third, the administrative aspect. Thank you.
Just one question for the director. This past week, all of the commissioners got an email from Jane Byrne, and she was asking a question about some kind of a meeting that was held recently that said that we're going to pave all the roads in Sedgwick County. And so I don't know what she misunderstood, but I don't even know what the meeting was that she was discussing. So I don't know if Chad would have some details on that, or if we need to get Jim. I'm trying to find out. There's no possible way that we have any money in our budget to pave all of the roads in Sedgwick County. So I don't understand her question. So I want to make sure that we answer it accurately. Does anybody have any idea what that's about?
I might speak to that and I can have my colleague jump in, but it did come up at our council meeting 2 meetings ago, I think, when we were talking about our OP3, our outsourced pavement preservation program. And there was a question of how many miles of unpaved roads and were we going to take any action on that, but no decision was made. It was just a discussion from the bench. So that might be what it was. Please feel free to chime in.
I concur.
Okay, well, I don't know what I just want to make it clear, we're not paving all the roads in Sedgwick County. So if anyone, unless someone has an unlimited budget, and then we'll entertain it, but then we're going to have a budget for maintaining them from that point forward. So just to clarify, we are not paving our roads. So we got 600 miles that we're maintaining now, and there's about 1,200 more miles that are unpaved. And I don't know that we have any way of doing that. So very good. Next item then is public comments. Does anyone wish to speak on public comments today? Does not sound like we have anyone public comments, so we'll move to item 4. The first item today, Nick and Chad are going to talk about the funding that we deferred from last month.
Thank you. At the last meeting of this body, it was requested that WAMPO staff make adjustments to the recommendations of the Project Selection Committee and Technical Advisory Committee regarding the distribution of Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, Highway Infrastructure Program, and year-end balance project funding. And so in consequence of coordinating that effort with the staff of relevant agencies, we're presenting 2 action items regarding that, starting on page 6 of your packet. The first action item is an adjusted version of the recommendations that you were presented previously, and then the second action item will be will be in regard to funds not distributed in that first round of recommendations. Let's see. The Project Selection Committee met on the 24th of September, the TAC on the 27th. And per your instructions, we are presenting these action items here today. Reminder, the available funding sources under consideration, about 3.8 million of coronavirus funds, HIP funds from 2020 amount of 683,000, and from 2021 of about 557,000. And then year-end balance funds from 2021 of 232,000, and funds taken off of the WAMPO travel demand update project in the amount of $803,100 for a total of a little more than 6 million under consideration. Now, for the adjusted recommendations, where is first of all that recommending that the WAMPO travel demand model receive $700,000 in Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act funding, covering the 100% of the project cost, thereby eliminating the local match that would otherwise be required, and as a result, meaning that it no longer would be using any CMAQ funds at all. And then the balance of the coronavirus funds, a little more than $3 million, going on to the City of Wichita West Street Harry DePawnee project in 2023. And then the 2020 HIP funds going on to the Zoo Boulevard Bridge project from Sedgwick County, and the Valley Center project on Meridian Avenue, receiving the 2021 HIP funds, with a redistribution of STP funds among the three 2023 projects of $401,584 from the West Street project in 2023 being redistributed to the Zoo Boulevard and Meridian projects in the amounts of $64,904 Zoo Boulevard and $336,680 to Meridian Avenue, producing net allocations to those three projects between the coronavirus funds, HIP funds, and Surface Transportation Block Grant redistributions of what you see in the right column here. So for West Street, that would be $2,687,513. Zoo Boulevard, $747,968, and Meridian, $893,397. And on top of that, redistributing $700,000 of the CMAQ funds that were taken off of the WAMPO travel demand model update project and putting it onto the 2022 City of Mays project, Academy Avenue improvements from Mays Road to Mays City Park. All right. So your action options are to approve these adjusted recommendations that I've just presented, or not approve them, or approve them with specific changes. And predictably, our recommendation is to approve the adjusted recommendations as they are.
Nick, thank you. Do we have any questions from anyone on what the adjusted WAMPO staff came up with on this new proposal? Very good. Well, I appreciate the staff going back and looking at it. I appreciate the fact that there was a couple things that we weren't aware of initially. And none of the projects that were originally recommended are going to go away. They're still going to exist. As soon as we get funding, we'll make sure that those are at the top of our priority. So, and we didn't know about this travel demand model. At least I wasn't aware of it. So that's got added, and it's something that's needed. And I wasn't aware of the Academy Street in Mays. So that got added. With that, unless there are any questions, I make a motion that we approve what the recommendations were and adjusted by WAMPO staff.
I would second.
We have a motion, a second by Troy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next is our WP as briefed by Chad. I'm sorry. There's two parts. I apologize. Second part, Nick.
Yes. The second action item that this has been divided into, the impetus for this is that the just now approved adjusted recommendations still leave some funds unallocated in specifically Surface Transportation Block Grant and CMAQ funds in 2022 that as of right now can be allocated to 2022 projects, but it won't be until later in the current fiscal year that they could be potentially carried over to 2023 and then made available to other projects. So between the CMAQ portion of the 2021 year-end balance and funds coming off of the WAMPO travel demand model update project, it's this makes available $746,892.12 of CMAQ funds, and for STP, out of the year-end balance, $148,757.78, for a total just a little less than $900,000. And then of course, other funds may become available later on in the current federal fiscal year that this body would need to decide what would be done with those funds if and when they become available, such as from deobligations from other projects or other sources. And the other important piece of background for this second part of the action item is that the City of Mays project, Academy Avenue improvements from Mays Road to Mays City Park, although this body just approved an extra $700,000 for that project, that was based off of the Project Selection Committee's recommendations that were made prior to the City of Mays receiving updated cost estimates for the project. And at the time, it had been funded up to the 80% federal level, that is the maximum allowed. But with the new cost increases, even with the $700,000 that has just been added, to get it, in order for it to be 80% funded again, based on the new cost estimates in 2022, would require another $1,055,381 were to get up to that point, which as you notice is more than the amount of available funds that I have just stated is unallocated. So the adjusted recommendations that we now present for your consideration are: first, to allocate the next available qualifying funds to the Academy Avenue project up to $1,055,381 on top of the $700,000 just approved. Now, this would mean using the entirety of the $895,000 shown here, or rounded down to the dollar or whatever. And then if other funds become available in time for them to be added to this project before it obligates, that would be done. And then thinking ahead, we are also making the recommendation that in fiscal year 2022, if any additional funds become available from whatever source, that they be apportioned proportionately among any remaining 2022 projects whose funding is less than 80% federal as a result of unexpected cost increases. And then eventually, if there are still funds available at the end of the federal fiscal year, decisions would be made on whether or to what extent those funds would be carried over to 2023. So your action options are to approve these additional recommendations, or not approve them, or approve them with specific changes.
Thank you, Nick. And in your package, I think on page 10, you've got a letter from the City of Mays from Richard Lemunion explaining what the need is for this. Oh, are there any questions at all on this issue?
Yes, I got a question. You said that any funds that were not funded up to 80%, any projects that were not funded up to 80%, as you are probably well aware of, Bel Air ended up with $1 million cost increase when we went to the KDOT funding. So we're at less than 80% on the Woodlawn project now. Would there be any possibility if there are some of these extra funds that some of that could be benefit Bel Air as well?
Is that project scheduled to obligate in federal fiscal year 2022?
They've already done the bid on it in September.
Well, as soon as there's been any obligation activity on a phase of a project, then it is not possible to put more money on it.
So simply because of an inflation factor, we're going to be stuck with the extra $1 million. Is that what you're saying?
I do not have information on hand about that specific project, but if it has obligated, then we cannot get any more federal funds on it.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor, this you've already obligated this, have you not?
We did sign the obligation, but we asked this question before we signed that obligation, was told that there was no more funds. And then we hear this kind of information, which is, okay, that changes the information that we had at the time.
But Chad, is there any way of going back and trying to find some funding to help? Or is it too late based on the obligation?
We will work with staff at KDOT and we'll find out more information based on, the time of the program budget for the particular project. So we will work on that, Mayor. I believe 2021 is when the Bel Air project is programmed.
I think that is correct. Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I want to go back and check what possibilities are there. At the moment, it's 2022 funds I'll look into that and then I'll get back with you.
I appreciate you reviewing that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have staff go back and take a look at it and we'll work with KDOT and see if there's anything that's possible. I can't tell you at the top of my head right now.
Chairman, I wonder if all of our projects are now underfunded, right? If we can infer from these two projects that costs have went up, I don't know what we can do about it, but it almost sounds like we're in trouble that way for each project.
Well, we're finding the cost of everything is going up. So there's a strong possibility that just about everything we got is underfunded at this point. Hey, any other questions then? So if there are no questions, I move that we take the recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Richard Lemunion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. I'm sorry.
I'll make one comment.
Richard.
Just on behalf of the city of Mays, and as the comments were just brought up, we're all in the same boat. And I thank WAMPO staff and the policy board and all the committees that were involved in it. It is a very difficult time, and we all know that. But City of Mays thanks you and the thousands of our visiting students who live in Wichita. They thank you. So it'll make it safer for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Okay. Next item is back to Chad for the Reimagine Move 2040, Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The long range transportation plan amendment, staff worked really closely with the KDOT staff. It was a short timeline to update this amendment after the IKE projects were recommended for this amendment. So Nick would update on the list of projects. Jordan will update on where the project locations are. And then Catherine will present the schedule of public involvement and how this amendment will be accomplished, the completion and for your approval by next meeting. So just an update for you. So Nick, please go ahead.
Thank you. The affected projects in this current amendment are listed here. One is on, well, going to be good. Jordan, would it be better if you presented this part?
Hello. So there are 3 new projects, one of them being K96, another one being K42, and then a third one being a bucket bicycle and pedestrian project. Those are the 3 new ones. There are also some administrative adjustments on other projects. The North Junction project, there was a duplicate project that is being deleted, and then the funds being updated for the other one. So these are where the projects are located. The gold one at the top is the North Junction Gold Phase. And then the blue one is here 95 one, and then the red one down there as well. Which is the K42 one. The North Junction project is split up into 3 phases, and the gold phase is the one that is being adjusted, and then I will turn it over to Nick to talk more about these.
Thank you, Jordan. The bike ped bucket project was an addition by WAMPO to add some flexibility to the MTP, but we received specific sponsor requests for the amendments to add the project on K96 for expanding from 4 lanes to 6 lanes, and for the improvements to K42 in the southwest of the area, as well as for the aforementioned administrative adjustments to the North Junction project, which do not make any substantive changes. Here is the schedule and funding that we were given in the official request letter for the K96 project between Hillside and Greenwich. So it has construction in 2026, but all the prior phases during the period of the current TIP, and then a total project cost of $261,450,000. And then likewise, the K42 project with construction in 2023 and a total cost of $7,380,000. Both of these are KDOT highway projects. All MTPs and TIPs are required to be fiscally constrained, meaning that projected revenues are equal to or greater than projected expenditures during 2020 to 2040, and our revised math based on the addition of these projects finds that the reimagined Move 2040 MTP is still fiscally constrained. Fiscal constraint analysis includes federal funding, state funding, local funding, and debt financing as sources, and then costs of maintenance and operations, debt service, i.e. paying off the debts, and MTP projects, meaning the money for the specific projects listed in the project list appendix of the MTP, such as the ones that were just shown being added on the preceding slides. And so we find that between the anticipated revenues and anticipated costs shown here, that comes to a balance of about $42 million in the positive for 2020 to 2040.
Thank you. We at WAMPO are currently in the process of finishing up our public participation requirements for this proposed MTP amendment. That includes print and digital media releases, website updates, and a public open house that we held this past week. The public comment period for this proposed amendment opened on October 23rd, and it will continue to be open until November 21st. And then following the public comment period, the proposed amendment will go to the Technical Advisory Committee on November 22nd for a formal recommendation, and then this body here will see their official recommendation and take action on Tuesday, December 14th. Are there any questions about the proposed amendment?
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gordon.
I guess I've got one question. I know when the governor came down along with Julie Lorenz, they briefed us on the K-42, and that's great. We appreciate it very much. And we talked a lot about the North Junction, and the state has been working very diligently with us on the North Junction. I appreciate that. And I think doing K-96 6 lanes is a great idea, but I don't ever recall being briefed on that by the governor or Secretary Lorenz. So it it's 200 and some million dollars, comes as kind of a surprise to me that that's suddenly in this amendment. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on how that it got there without us being aware of that happening.
I can say it was announced as a project for the development pipeline in the last round of Ike announcements. That's probably the first announcement of the project. Beyond that, I don't know, what could I help out with on that?
Well, I guess it just, we've been watching all these different projects, and that's a great project. I have no problem with it at all. But normally our transportation coalition and WAMPO and the city of Wichita and Sedgwick County, we all get behind these projects, and it just kind of shows up in this amendment. So that's why it was a kind of a surprise to me.
I believe the need to put it in there is to continue the design work on the project for sure. I know there'll be continued discussions on what moves forward and other items like that.
Okay, I could say I don't have a problem with it. I just, I don't know if I wasn't paying attention or how that it got to that point that I didn't realize that this was here. It's great. I mean, $200 and some million is fantastic, but I just kind of felt ill at ease when suddenly something shows up I wasn't aware of. So you want Amendment 1, the action that you're asking for is that we approve Amendment 1?
It's my apologies. It's an update item, Commissioner. It's only an update at the moment.
Item C is an update?
Yeah, it's only an update for you that the, just the public involvement and status of the amendment at the moment.
Okay. And in the meantime, Chad's been whispering in my ear that I goofed up a minute ago. So let's go back to Chad and have him explain what vote that I missed. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my apologies with staff and myself. We didn't clarify very well that item A had two parts of action items. So in the process, item A was a bit complex. So staff divided one item A, 4A, into two action items, but we skipped 4B, that's Unified Planning Work Program. So my apologies that the second action item appeared to be, the 4B, but now staff requests that if can staff present 4B item for action item.
So you want us to, okay, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. As you all know, at the end of each year, approximately by November, staff presents the planned activities and corresponding budget for the WAMPO activities for the following year. So for the year 2022, the packet from pages 11 to 38, the UPWP is in your packets. This is developed in coordination with staff at KDOT, FHWA staff, and then FDA staff. Staff is very thankful for the coordination and input from partners with KDOT and FHWA and FDA. Now it's in good shape with this coordination in the past couple months. Just to give highlights on what UPWP summary is, I would like to request if you could please see page 37. That would give a good summary of some of studies were listed there. A couple of them were safety plan and an active transportation plan. The safety plan is something that staff is following up from our chair, Commissioner Dennis, mentioning it's important that we work on how we reduce the fatalities and serious injuries on our transportation system. Hence, staff made a plan to follow up on that and see how a RFP can be developed and best practices in the nation were observed by staff, what had been done with other MPOs. And in this example, some of the MPOs have coordinated with cities and local jurisdictions and police staff and the crash reports and finding the causes. And one of the examples of mitigation measures were like how can infrastructure improvements and behavioral improvements can be recommended through the plan. A couple of examples of how the committee would be developed in the next year to work with a consulting firm. So this is one example. In addition, as you all know, staff is involved in long-range transportation plan amendments and short-range transportation plan tip amendments anyway. Those are regular activities. And these studies that were identified are in addition to those regular staff activities that were planned for next year. And then, of course, every couple of years we have tip update, transportation improvement program update. So that work is also planned for this UPWP 2022 as well. So that's just a highlights for you. There is a lot of details, but that page gives a good summary of all. One other study I could update you is the active transportation plan that City of Wichita is planning to undertake next year. WAMPO staff would like to partner with City of Wichita and see how the boundary can be expanded to the WAMPO regional boundary to update the active transportation plan, bike, ped, and trails system for the active transportation plan throughout the region. So these are a couple of examples how staff would be spending their time in the activities next year, in addition to tip amendments and studies. So, today, this in coordination with our partners, I want to thank our partners, FHWA staff, KDOT staff, and FDA staff for helping us work with and develop this today. So staff would like to request you approve the adoption of 2020 DPWP or not approve. or approve with specific changes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chad. Do we have questions for anyone? When Chad and I went through this chart that's on page 37, one of the things that I asked him on when he's doing the safety studies, if there is anything that we need to do as far as rail safety, and I recognize that rail safety and a lot of the things dealing with that are KDOT issues, and they're not county type issues. But we just had a fatal accident out on 135th Street recently, and so it is a concern in that region, and that rail line goes all the way across to western Sedgwick County. So I don't know if we need, if when we're doing the safety studies, if we could take a look in coordination with KDOT to see if there's anything that we need to do to improve the safety on especially that rail line out west. So unless anyone has any objections to that, I make a motion that we take the required action unless there's a question. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, we're back on track. All right. Sounds good. So we are now on a update of the TIP locations and the funding amounts. And that is Jordan and Nick.
Hello, everybody, again. Nick and I will be talking about the WAMPO sub-allocated projects and the WAMPO non-sub-allocated projects. So here is a map of the sub-allocated projects that are going to be constructed or implemented between 2021-2024 TIP cycle. There are 21 total projects that are mappable, or no, there are 21 projects in this and 15 of them are mappable as seen here. As you can see, the colors at the bottom on the legend, green are road projects, the brown color is bridge projects, blue are intersections, and then pink are bike and pedestrian projects. So here's the entire list of the 21 projects. The first 15 are the mapped projects labeled 43 through 57. This table includes the map ID, the WAMPO ID, the lead agency, the project title, the year, the first year that the project is being constructed or implemented. It's kind of cut off up there, but the portion of federal funds, which includes the WAMPO sub-allocated funds, the portion of non-federal funds, the total project cost, and then the far corner is the WAMPO sub-allocated funds being used. And then we have a breakdown of the WAMPO sub-allocated funds by year and by type. There are 28 total projects that are using sub-allocated funds in the TIP cycle of 21 to 24. And so in the year 21, 14.7 million of STP, 1.8 million of CMAC, 1.1 million of TA. In 2022, about 6 million in STP, 3.8 million in CMAC, 366,000 in TA. In 2023, about 9 million in STP, 1 million in CMAC, and 0 in TA. And then in 2024, 9.8 million in STP, 0 in CMAC, and 2.2 in TA. And I will hand it over to Nick for the WAMPO non-sub-allocated.
Thank you, Jordan. To be clear that when we talk about sub-allocated and non-sub-allocated, sub-allocated refers to SDP, i.e. Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, CMAC, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, and TA, or Transportation Alternatives Program, but not HIP funds or coronavirus funds, such as the ones just distributed. So even though those are awarded by WAMPO for these purposes, they are not called the sub-allocated. It refers to the three funding sources that are subject to annual obligation limitations from KDOT. So anyway, and now here we show the projects in the TIP that do not use those funds, i.e. non-sub-allocated. As you can see, there are quite a few more of them and quite a few different types: bridges, interchanges, intersections, bike ped, railroad, safety, technology, and transit. And here is the list of them. And let's see here, numbered 1 through 42 for the mapped ones, and then in gray the ones that are not mappable, such as bucket projects that can be used for multiple things, or planning related projects or operations, with a total of 54 projects total, and over the 4 years of the TIP, $213 million. And this is projects specifically that have construction during 21 to 24. And in case there's any confusion about some of the numbers and totals that you have seen here, first of all, the number, you can see the numbers represent only the years 21 to 24, not anything outside of that. For example, there are projects that are still in our TIP that from prior to 2021 that are still kept in the TIP because they're not officially closed out yet, and so that excludes these first two columns on this sheet. And then we have also basis off of in cases where our project is advanced construction, going off of the funding in its actual advanced construction year, as opposed to the conversion payback year, i.e. when the sponsor agency spends the money, as opposed to when they are scheduled to be reimbursed by the federal government. And so the approximate to what you have just seen would be the numbers in red here of 55 million sub-allocated, 100 million non-sub-allocated for federal funding. And then for these four different, and then the slide shows these four different ways of reckoning things, of whether or not it's limited to 21 to 24, and whether it goes by advanced construction year or conversion payback year, divided up into local and state funding, and then federal funding sub-allocated and non-sub-allocated, just to give an idea of how some of this works.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Jordan. This is just to give an update. No action required on this item as well. I think Nick and Jordan are, staff in general wants to provide more clarity to the members with maps and tables where the projects are in our region. What are the projects that are committed? Because TIP 2021 to 24 are the projects that are, we can safely call it as committed projects. Whereas long-range transportation plan, those projects are listed as, the vision, the projects that we anticipate. So that's the effort staff was making, how GIS mapping and tables can be provided to members. So it's just an update for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nick and Jordan. Appreciate it. Okay, next item is committee updates. I'll start off with the executive committee. We did meet last Friday. The main reason that we wanted to get together is to make sure that the executive committee went through and took a look at the staff recommendations that we all voted on today for changing around some of the allocations of the funding. So you saw the outcome of that today, but we wanted to make sure that the executive committee was aware of that, and if there needed to be any tweaks, that it was ready to go. The other thing we talked about was there's an RFP out for on-call legal service. Dan Wajak and I discussed the packages that we got back. We've made recommendations to Chad. I don't know when we can announce that. But I'll turn it over to Chad. He can tell us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think next meeting, the contract will be, at the moment, the contract is being reviewed by KDOT staff. Usual, we coordinate with staff at KDOT to make sure everything is in good shape, and we both agreed. Once KDOT staff gives us a green signal, it will come to your approval on December 14th. Thank you.
Very good. So we'll see some more about that. But as I said, Dan and I did go through the RFP and have approved what's moving forward. The other thing that we talked about was our Wampo budget. As you know, the executive committee has been getting a lot more details on where our budget is right now, especially if we go back in time when at one point we owed $500,000 to the city of Wichita, and that concerned us. Actually, thanks to the leadership in Wampo, I think we're down to like 92,000, somewhere in that vicinity. So we're moving in the right direction. And all the rest of the budgeting, we get huge graphs and charts from Chad each month so that we know exactly where we're at. And it's something important. We got to the point a few years ago that things were happening in Wampo that the executive committee didn't know about, that the TPB didn't know about. It ended up that we had to have some major audits to figure out where we were at, and KDOT and the Federal Highway Department didn't appreciate where we were at financially. So the actions that we've been taking and that the leadership's been taking have definitely improved where we're at, and we review it every month now to make sure that things that were happening before don't ever happen again. So just wanted to give you an update on that. The other thing we talked about were the items that you all voted on today so that we could get an update. So anything from any of the executive committee members that I might have missed? Very good. Well, we'll move on to some of the other committees then. I know see Alan's in the audience. So would you like to give us an update on the active transportation?
Thank you. Just a reminder that our next meeting is December 1 at 9:30. It's held virtually. All of you are welcome and invited to attend. We'd love to have your participation and input in it. We'll be hearing presentations from Goddard and from Sedgwick County, similar to what you received last month from those two, on what their active transportation plans are, with the ultimate goal of redoing the active transportation plan for Wampo in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. Is Dr. Abla, is she online?
I'll fill in for Dr. Abla. We had last week, Wednesday, we had a safety and health committee meeting. We discussed TPB members' goals of how to improve safety and reduce the crashes in that meeting as well. We discussed the UPWP safety plan program, and we also discussed how coordination with member jurisdictions like Wichita, Derby, Andover, Mays, and all local jurisdictions be part of this development of plan, so that when the time comes for implementation, we all are in this together. Those types of discussions occurred at last meeting. And then we scheduled our next meeting on February 2nd on Wednesday. At that time, we wanted to invite a consulting firm to present best practices. We also invited a consulting firm to update you on the best practices at the next December 14th as well. We'll confirm that soon. So that's how much we discussed last time, and that's how we are progressing on that item, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. Next item is Wichita KDOT, but I don't believe that Tom Hine is on. He had another meeting today, so I don't see him anywhere. Okay, well, he had kind of several other things that was going on today, so we'll move on to KDOT. Brent or Mike, either one of you want to brief on what KDOT has?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think Mike is on. I think he had a commitment at 4 o'clock today. We do want to go over a couple of the projects were mentioned. The North Junction project, it is moving forward. We're doing property acquisitions all the time on that project on the west side 135 right now. Still moving forward. The project to build the first portion, the accelerated one, you can see the columns going up, pier caps is moving along pretty good. And that project continues to be a high priority, and it's everybody is scrambling fast to keep that one on schedule. K42, add 10-foot shoulders down to K49. That was on the list today. That is going to go to construction too. Outside of that, from that location down to Suppiesville, we are going to add 8-foot shoulders in Sumner County, and that should all go at the same time. The 6-lane one for K96, I hope I don't lead anybody astray here. The next step for that one in the design process is get a consultant on board, move forward to look at the big scope on that and what it would take to build that project. So that's really the next phase for that in the design. It's been selected for design. We do anticipate soon knowing what's been what the outcome of the local consult is. I don't have that for you today, but it will come out soon. So be patient. Unless anybody has any other questions, that's about the update I have for today.
Super, thank you, Brent. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Federal Highway, and I don't see Rick online. Is anyone from Federal online?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Oh, there we go. Please.
This is Cecily. I know there have been some talk recently about the new infrastructure bill, and we haven't received fully everything that it's going to entail yet. But I plan to be in close talks as soon as we can get more information on the release of funding and any of the new guidelines that are going to be handed out. It'll probably take a couple of weeks before we can get a full layout of everything that the new infrastructure bill entails and how we are going to proceed with that. But I will keep in touch. And I also want to thank Chad there for keeping us up to date on his UPWP and getting everything settled. You guys did an excellent job. And that's all I had, unless there were any questions for me.
Do we have any questions? Well, we sincerely appreciate what you're doing to take us forward in funding from the federal government. And we look forward to anything that you can come up with in the future to give us an idea of what we can expect from the federal government as we move forward. But I understand that was just passed, and it's going to take a while before that you can analyze it and tell us what's actually happening. But we look forward to that. Thank you. Okay, if there's no questions there, other business, anyone have anything for other?
I just had a couple of tables for, Cecily will provide additional information. Well, there's a slide, Jordan, on the next slide, I think. So one more, next slide. Yeah, and then, just the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that Cecily will be presenting later on. There are priorities at the moment, and more information would be obtained, but how the $284 billion at the moment is prioritized. It looks like preservation of the system, like roads and bridges and preservation transportation system, is still a high priority. Transit and rail seems to have taken up a higher priority as well throughout many parts of MPOs and nation throughout. So Safety, of course, is listed in that as a high priority as well. So these are the, how the distribution of funding is at the moment, but more information would develop, and Cicely and I would keep an eye on those. Jordan, next slide has a graph of the same, how, at the moment, how this bill has allocated various parts of the transportation improvements. More to come later. And I also want to thank KDOT staff and FHWA for a great partnership as well on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Anything else for other? The only thing, I did talk to Chad and the staff a little bit. I really appreciated all the briefings that the communities gave, and I was trying to figure out and brainstorm with them on what our next step ought to be to make sure that we know how to move forward. As if we're all educated, we can make better decisions. So one of the things that I asked them to take a look at, possibly looking at, was bringing folks in from like WSU to look at the economic development based on transportation, or anything that deals with how that we can move forward economically and the impact of transportation on how that works. So we're brainstorming some things along those lines. So we may be getting some things added to the agenda in the future to take a look at it. Going back to my old director of our public works, his favorite statement was that transportation is the mother's milk of economic development. And so I steal that. Since he's gone, I can do that legally. That was kind of the direction that I was leaning. But if anyone has anything that transportation related that we ought to make sure that this entire board is familiar with, and how that we can move this area, this region, and it has to be regionally specific, because I don't want to concentrate on just certain areas. I want to make sure that we're moving the whole region forward. So that's my ideas right now. If somebody has anything better or something that we need to add, please let me know. If there's nothing else, it's now 4 o'clock. We did good. Thank you all. We'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.